David Blackwood, a cold and ruthless CEO, a man admired by the world for his intelligence and business acumen. However, beneath that glamorous exterior lies a soul scarred by pain and resentment. As a child, David once had a happy family until a woman named Madeline Carter, Evelyn's mother, stepped into his parents' marriage. That illicit affair shattered his home, leaving his mother devastated and ultimately passing away in loneliness. The memories of countless sleepless nights by his mother's sickbed continue to haunt him. David has never forgotten her tears, and now he believes that revenge is the only way to fill the void in his heart. He had waited for years, tracking every move of Madeline Carter, but fate opened a new door when he discovered her daughter, Evelyn Carter, an innocent and kind-hearted woman. A cruel plan gradually took shape. He would destroy Evelyn just as her mother had destroyed his family. Evelyn Carter, a diligent office worker, leads a simple yet resilient life. She lives in a small apartment with her mother, the person she loves most in the world. Evelyn never had a wealthy or luxurious childhood, but she is proud of her mother, the woman she believes single-handedly raised her with tireless effort over the years. To Evelyn, life is a cycle of long working hours and caring for her sick mother at night. She is completely unaware that the mother she reveres is the reason for the tragedy in the life of the man she is about to marry. Evelyn lives under the constant stress of mounting medical bills. She is exhausted from working full-time while tending to her mother every day. The only thing keeping her going is the belief that somehow she will overcome it all. When David discovers that Evelyn is the daughter of the woman who destroyed his family, he decides to ruin her life in the most ruthless way, through a loveless marriage, trapping her within her own dreams. He wants Evelyn to experience the same despair his mother once did, to watch her fall to her knees and beg him, only to be discarded without mercy. With meticulous calculations, David begins to approach Evelyn. He presents himself as a charming gentleman, offering her warmth she had never experienced before. Through small gifts, lavish dinners, and his irresistible presence, he gradually wins her trust. David makes Evelyn believe that she is special, the only woman who could enter his world. But behind his charming smile lies a dark plan only he knows. The fateful day arrives sooner than Evelyn expected. In an upscale restaurant, under the glow of twinkling lights, David proposes to her with a sparkling diamond ring and a promise to take care of her financial burdens and provide for her mother's treatment. His eyes are filled with tenderness, but deep inside, they hold an unreadable coldness. Evelyn is stunned. She cannot believe that such a perfect man would choose her, an ordinary girl with a difficult life. But when she thinks of her mother, of the endless hospital visits and the fear of losing the only family she has, she cannot refuse. David's proposal feels like a lifeline, helping her hold onto the last glimmer of hope for her mother. Evelyn agrees, but her heart whispers that something isn't right. Their wedding is an overwhelming spectacle of opulence, becoming the talk of the elite. Evelyn, adorned in a stunning wedding gown, stands before the mirror in a gold-adorned room, yet her heart feels empty. Since accepting David's proposal, everything has moved too quickly. Dress fittings, venue selections, and guest lists, all arranged by him. Evelyn feels like a doll placed in her position without a say in anything. The grand ballroom sparkles with crystal chandeliers, pristine white flowers lining the aisle, and hundreds of guests eagerly awaiting the couple's vows. But amidst the grandeur, Evelyn only feels an unbearable coldness. David stands at the altar, impeccably dressed in a black suit, his face devoid of emotion except for a faint, calculated smile. His hand is ice cold as he takes Evelyn's, sending shivers down her spine. When the officiant asks, "Do you, David Blackwood, take Evelyn Carter to be your lawfully wedded wife?" The comma David merely nods, his deep voice resonating with a chilling indifference. "I do." Evelyn's vows tremble as she speaks. "I do." Applause erupts. Cheers fill the air, but Evelyn feels like she is trapped in a gilded cage. Looking into David's eyes, she finds no love, only an invisible distance, and the nagging sense that she is merely a pawn in his game. Will Evelyn uncover the truth behind this marriage? And will David truly achieve his revenge? Welcome, dear members of the Soul Stories family, to today's tale. Please subscribe to the channel and become part of this growing family. Let us know which city you're following the story from. The wedding night of Evelyn and David unfolded in an atmosphere thick with tension, not the kind born of excitement or anticipation, but of cold distance and unspoken conflict. Evelyn, draped in a pristine silk gown, her face tinged with melancholy, knew all too well that this marriage was not born out of love. It was merely an unspoken agreement, a path she had been forced to take for the sake of her ailing mother. Yet despite her awareness of the harsh reality, her heart could not help but feel the sting of betrayal. David stood before Evelyn, his sharp gaze scanning every delicate feature of her face. He looked at her not with the tenderness of a newlywed husband, but with the eyes of a predator who had finally ensnared his prey. There was no rush in his movements. He approached her slowly, deliberately, studying every flicker of emotion that crossed her face. To him, this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment she would crumble before him, just as her mother had once shattered his family. However, the instant his hand touched her soft skin for the first time, he felt a genuine tremor beneath his fingertips. Her clear, innocent eyes held a quiet apprehension, devoid of the cunning or deceit he had always assumed she possessed. And then, when the decisive moment arrived, David froze. Evelyn was still a virgin. A wave of shock crashed over him, catching him off guard in a way he had never anticipated. He had always believed Evelyn to be just like her mother, a woman skilled in seduction, using her beauty to achieve her goals. But the truth before him was completely different. Evelyn had never belonged to anyone, had never used her charm to gain anything. She was far more innocent and pure than he had ever imagined. This unexpected revelation stirred something within him, something unsettling and foreign. Evelyn, noticing the conflict in David's eyes, did not understand why he hesitated. She had braced herself for his inevitable possession, for the ruthless dominance she expected from him. But instead, he simply lay beside her, maintaining a careful distance. That night, David did not touch her, as she had feared. Instead, he lay in silence, staring at the ceiling, his mind swirling with thoughts he could not yet comprehend. In the days that followed, the tension between them remained palpable. David continued to maintain his cold, distant demeanor, yet deep inside, he couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn. He found himself observing her more closely, noticing the small, thoughtful gestures that had once escaped his attention. Evelyn remained gentle and caring, despite his emotional distance. She quietly prepared breakfast for him each morning, placing his cup exactly the way he liked it, without needing to ask. She gently reminded him to take his coat whenever the weather turned chilly. One evening, after an exhausting day at work, David returned home with a pounding headache. Without a word, Evelyn placed a steaming cup of ginger tea before him. The soothing aroma filled the air, and when he looked at her, he saw no calculation, only genuine care. He couldn't comprehend why Evelyn continued to treat him with such kindness when he had offered her nothing but cold indifference. Despite his attempts to remain detached, David began to feel subtle changes stirring within him. Every time he watched Evelyn care for her mother, her soft smiles and the worry in her eyes gnawed at him. It unsettled him to realize that he was beginning to care. He tried to ignore the nagging urge to protect her, to shield her from pain. But with each passing day, that urge grew stronger. Slowly, David realized that his satisfaction with his revenge plan was beginning to wane. Instead of feeling triumphant, he started to feel guilty when he saw Evelyn enduring his coldness with quiet resilience. The anger that had once fueled him was no longer directed at her, but at himself. He could no longer ignore the growing conflict in his heart. Why did he suddenly feel the need to protect Evelyn when his original plan had been to break her? The lines between revenge and something deeper were beginning to blur, and David found himself standing at a crossroads he never anticipated. One evening, when Evelyn returned home after a long day at the hospital taking care of her mother, she looked more exhausted than ever. David stood at a distance, watching her with an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. He saw her frail shoulders trembling with fatigue, yet she still carried herself with quiet strength. She never complained, never blamed him for his coldness. She simply did what needed to be done, without expecting anything in return. And that realization weighed heavily on him in ways he couldn't quite explain. That night, as Evelyn drifted into sleep, David sat by her bedside, his gaze softer than it had ever been before. He reached out, wanting to brush his fingers against her delicate face, but at the last moment, he pulled his hand back. He didn't want to let himself go too far. He was afraid of his own emotions. If he allowed himself to love her, it would mean abandoning the hatred, the revenge he had carefully nurtured for years. Evelyn remained unaware of David's inner turmoil. To her, he was still the distant, indifferent husband who had married her out of necessity. But in the moments she didn't see, David had begun to change. He found himself watching her more often, feeling uneasy whenever she looked sad. She was no longer just a tool for his revenge. She was becoming someone he respected, someone he admired. Yet David couldn't face his feelings, couldn't admit that his heart was beginning to soften for Evelyn. This internal struggle left David more withdrawn than ever. He didn't know what to do with the emotions stirring inside him. He began staying at work late, avoiding Evelyn even more. Yet no matter how much he tried to distance himself, thoughts of her lingered in his mind. The walls David had built to protect himself were slowly crumbling. He realized that one day he would have to choose between revenge and love, between the past and the present. But did he have the courage to face that truth? As time passed in their cold, loveless marriage, Evelyn's only concern was her mother. The cruel disease was slowly taking away her mother's life, and with each passing day, she grew weaker. Evelyn did everything she could, running back and forth between work and the hospital, clinging to the faint hope that she could somehow extend her mother's time. But the illness progressed relentlessly, like a candle slowly flickering out in the face of an inevitable storm. Her mother's final days were a constant cycle of worry and despair for Evelyn. She had once dreamed of a peaceful life for her mother, a life free of worries and pain. But now all she could do was hold on to her mother's frail hand, silently praying for a miracle she knew would never come. One evening, as David returned home from work, the house was enveloped in a heavy, suffocating silence. His steps halted at the doorway of the bedroom, where the dim glow of the bedside lamp cast weak, flickering light. He saw Evelyn sitting motionless by her mother's bedside, her eyes swollen and red, her face etched with unbearable sorrow. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks, and her trembling lips whispered, "Mom, I'm so sorry. I couldn't do anything more." Madeline Carter had passed away in her sleep, leaving this world in quiet resignation, free from its endless struggles and pain. Evelyn sat frozen, her eyes hollow, her body lifeless like a statue. She held onto her mother's cold hand as if letting go would mean losing her forever. David stood in the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched the woman he had once despised crumble before him. Her heart was shattered beyond repair, and what surprised him the most was the unexpected ache in his own chest. Evelyn had lost the only family she had, and for the first time in his life, he felt a deep sense of regret for his cruelty, for his presence in her life that had only brought more pain. From that day forward, something within David shifted. He no longer looked at Evelyn through the lens of revenge, but with a quiet empathy he never thought himself capable of. The love he had unknowingly developed for her began to outweigh the hatred he had harbored for so long. His desire for vengeance was slowly replaced by an urge to comfort and protect. David found himself staying closer to Evelyn, no longer distant and indifferent. He prepared meals for her, placed a warm blanket around her shoulders when she sat by the window for hours, lost in memories. He didn't offer words of comfort. He knew they would be meaningless, but his silent presence spoke volumes. One night, when Evelyn broke down into heart-wrenching sobs, David no longer kept his distance. Instead, he pulled her into his arms, letting her cry against his chest. "I'm here, Evelyn. You're not alone," he whispered, his voice carrying none of the cold detachment it once did. Evelyn didn't know when it happened, but the man she once thought incapable of warmth had become her only source of comfort. The tenderness he showed her, though unspoken, seeped into the cracks of her broken heart. David, on the other hand, could no longer bear the thought of hurting Evelyn. Seeing her frail figure, her empty gaze, and the quiet strength she still carried, he felt like the worst kind of man. The rage and thirst for revenge that once consumed him now seemed trivial compared to the weight of Evelyn's sorrow. In those moments of silence and grief, David realized something profound. He was no longer fighting for revenge. He was fighting the overwhelming desire to love her, to take away her pain, and to mend the heart he had once intended to break. During the days when Evelyn was exhausted by the loss of her mother, David was the only one by her side. He no longer watched her from a distance but quietly stayed close, taking care of her in the only way he knew how. In the mornings, he would silently place a warm cup of tea on her desk. In the evenings, he prepared simple meals, knowing well that she would hardly eat. When Evelyn sat motionless by the window through the night, lost in memories, David would drape a warm blanket over her shoulders without saying a word. For the first time, Evelyn felt his quiet concern. Not cold, not controlling, but genuine and tender, in a way she had never expected from him. On the nights when grief overwhelmed her, and she could no longer hold back her tears, David would sit beside her without speaking. And when she could no longer contain the sobs racking her body, he reached out, gently pulling her into his arms. "I'm here, Evelyn. You're not alone." His voice no longer carried the icy detachment of the past, but a rare gentleness that caught her off guard. Evelyn had once believed that this man was incapable of love, incapable of empathy, but his patience and quiet presence had slowly crept into the cracks of her broken heart. David never thought he would become a source of comfort for Evelyn. Yet seeing her fragile figure, the emptiness in her eyes and the coldness of her trembling hands, he felt like a sinner. The hatred he had once clung to now seemed insignificant in the face of Evelyn's real, raw suffering. Slowly he realized he could no longer bring himself to hurt her. Each time he saw her drained and vulnerable, he felt as though he had pushed too far down the path of revenge, forgetting that the human heart had its limits. There were nights when Evelyn fell asleep with swollen eyes and David would quietly sit beside her, his gaze filled with sorrow and regret. "Evelyn, I'm sorry." The words were whispered so softly that even he wasn't sure if she could hear them. As time passed, though no words of love were spoken, Evelyn gradually sensed a change in David. He was no longer the man who sought to destroy her. Instead, he had become someone who truly cared for her, someone who worried about her and because of her. One morning as Evelyn woke up, she found David sitting by her bedside, having dozed off from exhaustion. For the first time she realized that he was just a man, not the cold machine of vengeance she had once believed him to be. The sight of him, his usually sharp features softened by sleep, stirred something unfamiliar within her, a tenderness she hadn't expected. Deep inside Evelyn, something was beginning to shift. Perhaps the quiet gentleness he showed, though never put into words, had slowly started to seep into her heart. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, like a flicker of warmth in the midst of the cold reality they had shared. And from that moment on, she no longer felt as alone as she once did. Evelyn's grief over losing her mother still lingered, making her feel as if she were living in a world without light. Each passing day, she drowned in loneliness and regret. However, with David's silent support, she gradually returned to her daily routine. She continued her work, trying to focus on the small things to keep herself from breaking down. One afternoon, while tidying up David's study, Evelyn accidentally found an envelope lying on his desk. It was plain, nothing remarkable about it except for her name, Evelyn Carter, written on the front in David's familiar, firm handwriting. She hesitated for a moment, an inexplicable unease rising within her. David had changed so much in recent days, becoming more gentle and attentive, but a lingering doubt still gnawed at her heart, an invisible fear she had never dared to confront. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope, and as the pages slipped out, her eyes froze on the bold heading at the top of the first page. Objective: destroy Evelyn Carter so that her mother suffers the same pain mine did. Evelyn stood frozen. She couldn't believe her eyes. Each word on the page felt like a cold, sharp dagger piercing straight into her heart. She flipped through the pages, her eyes widening in horror as she read through the meticulously detailed plan David had devised. From his calculated approach to win her trust to forcing her into a marriage she thought was built on love, everything had been part of his cruel revenge plot. Her world crumbled around her, but the most painful blow came from a separate document lying at the bottom of the pile, an extensive report about her mother, Madeline Carter. Evelyn picked it up, her eyes fixated on the merciless words written in black ink. Madeline Carter, the woman who destroyed my family's happiness and drove my mother to a life of misery until the very end. Her heart clenched painfully. She couldn't believe what she was reading. Her mother, the woman she had loved and cared for all her life, was the reason behind the destruction of David's family. Had all the tragedies he endured stemmed from her mother's actions? Evelyn took a step back, her breathing uneven. She could no longer deny the truth. Those documents in her hands confirmed it. A wave of agony washed over her. She had always been proud of her mother, believing she had raised her alone with strength and dignity. But now she realized that the very person she admired had been the catalyst for the suffering of the man she had unknowingly come to love. Just then, David entered the room. He stopped in his tracks, his expression darkening when he saw Evelyn standing there, her face pale, her eyes filled with heartbreak and devastation. Evelyn, what are you doing?" David's voice faltered, his hands clenching, when he realized what she was holding. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She simply looked at him with eyes brimming with betrayal and pain. Taking a deep breath, she tried to hold back the sobs threatening to escape. "Was everything just a lie?" she asked, her voice breaking, trembling hands holding the documents out to him. David remained silent. He couldn't bring himself to deny it. He had always known this moment would come, but he had never expected it to hurt this much. Seeing the tears roll down Evelyn's face felt like an invisible hand tightening around his heart. She stared at him for a long moment, her gaze searching for something, anything, that could refute the truth she had just uncovered. But there was nothing. With a voice thick with emotion, she finally whispered, "I'm sorry." David's breath caught in his throat. "I'm sorry for my mother. I didn't know what she did to your family, but I never wanted to hurt you." Her sincere apology stunned him. She had no knowledge of the past, yet she was apologizing for the sins of someone else. Guilt churned within David, but he couldn't bring himself to say a word. Without another glance, Evelyn turned and fled the room, leaving David standing there, consumed by the crushing weight of his remorse. That night, Evelyn quietly packed her belongings. Every item she placed into the suitcase felt like a painful shard of memory cutting into her heart. She couldn't stay in this house for another second. Her heart was shattered and she could no longer bear to live in a place built on deception and lies. But deep down, she carried a secret, one she hadn't had the chance to share yet. She was pregnant. Evelyn had discovered her pregnancy weeks ago, but she had never found the right moment to tell David. She had planned to wait for the perfect time, a moment when they could sit down and talk about their future. But now, after everything she had uncovered about him, she couldn't let their child grow up in a home filled with revenge and falsehood. Standing before the mirror, Evelyn gently placed a hand on her still flat stomach, tears streaming down her face. "I will protect you, my love. I won't let anyone hurt you." Her voice was a whisper, a promise filled with both love and sorrow. She knew leaving wouldn't be easy. Stepping away from the life she had once believed in, from the man she had begun to love despite everything, felt like tearing a part of herself away. But she had to go. She had to leave behind the pain, the betrayal, and all the shattered dreams that came with them. With a deep breath, Evelyn zipped up her suitcase, wiping away her tears. She was determined to start anew, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. As dawn broke and the city remained shrouded in a misty haze, Evelyn quietly left the grand mansion, dragging a small suitcase behind her. She didn't dare to look back, afraid that her resolve would falter. Every step away from the life she once thought she could endure felt like another crack in her already shattered heart. What Evelyn didn't know was that inside the mansion, in the dimly lit bedroom they once shared, David had spent the entire night awake. He sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion, staring into the empty space she left behind. A hollow emptiness swelled within him, an unfamiliar ache that he had never known before. When he realized she was truly gone, panic seized him. He searched every corner of the house, called her phone repeatedly, and sent people scouring the city for any trace of her. But Evelyn had disappeared without a trace, without a single goodbye, without a single clue to her whereabouts. "Evelyn!" He whispered her name, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence of the mansion. The once lively and bustling estate now felt emptier and colder than ever before. The silence wrapped around every corner, suffocating him, reminding him of the woman who was no longer there. Without her presence, the house seemed devoid of life, reduced to a mere shell of luxury and emptiness. The towering walls, which once exuded power, now felt like prison bars trapping a man with nothing but regret. David had never felt so powerless. He had always been in control of his empire, of people's lives. But now he was at the mercy of a loneliness that gnawed at his very core. Each return to the mansion after a fruitless search weighed heavier on him, dragging him deeper into the abyss of his guilt and longing. He found himself in his office, staring at the empty desk where Evelyn used to quietly place his morning coffee. The soft echoes of her voice, the gentle rustle of paper as she tidied up, had once been background noise. Now they haunted him. The ticking of the wall clock was the only sound that broke the oppressive stillness, a cruel reminder of time slipping through his fingers, time he could never reclaim. Running a trembling hand through his hair, David shut his eyes, trying to chase away the memories that wouldn't leave him alone. Evelyn's tear-filled gaze, the quiver in her voice when she confronted him with the truth, and finally the silhouette of her walking away without a backward glance. Each moment replayed in his mind like a punishment he couldn't escape. The realization that he had lost her, truly lost her, settled like lead in his chest. He had once thought himself unbreakable, believing he could bend Evelyn to his will. But now he saw how wrong he had been. The anger and hatred that had once fueled him had burned away, leaving behind only the smoldering ashes of regret. Nights without sleep took their toll. David wandered the halls like a ghost, moving through rooms she had once inhabited. He ran his fingers along the spines of the books she used to read, remembering the way she would curl up with them late into the night. He could still picture the soft crease of her brows when she came across a difficult passage, or the quiet giggle she let out at something amusing. Every memory was so vivid, yet so painfully distant. Stepping into their bedroom, his eyes landed on the coat she had left behind, still hanging in the closet. A familiar scent of jasmine, her favorite, lingered in the fabric. He reached out, tracing the soft material with his fingers, as if clinging to the last piece of her that remained. A sharp pain twisted in his chest, raw and unrelenting. Sitting on the edge of the bed, his gaze remained fixed on the emptiness beside him. So many nights he had laid there, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, watching over her as she slept peacefully, oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. And yet what had he done? He had turned their marriage into a carefully calculated trap, only to realize too late that the woman he sought to destroy had become the one person he couldn't live without. He let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow and laced with self-loathing. "Do you hate me that much, Evelyn? Hate me enough to leave without a single word?" The mansion felt suffocating without her presence. How long had it been since he last heard her soft laughter? Since he last saw the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about the things she loved? Every room echoed with the absence of her warmth, and David finally faced the truth. He missed her, more than he ever thought possible. In the stillness of his solitude, he admitted to himself what he had been too blind to see before. He loved her, not because of revenge, not out of possession or pride, but because she had shown him what it meant to truly care for someone. Her kindness, her resilience, and the quiet strength she carried despite the weight of his cruelty. He had fallen for all of it, and now he feared it was too late. Lowering his head into his hands, his voice cracked as he whispered, "Evelyn, where are you? Please, come back to me." He didn't know how he had let her slip through his grasp, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. If he was given even the slightest chance to make things right, he would move heaven and earth to earn her forgiveness. But did fate still have that chance in store for him, or had he lost her forever? One early morning, as David sat silently in his office, his fingers tightly gripping a photo frame of Evelyn, his personal assistant Thomas entered with a grave expression on his face. "Sir Blackwood, I've found Evelyn." David shot up from his chair immediately, his heart clenching in his chest. "Where is she?" His voice was hoarse from sleepless nights. Thomas hesitated for a moment before handing him a stack of documents. On top was an ultrasound image, two tiny figures growing inside Evelyn's womb. "She's pregnant, sir, and it seems like she doesn't want you to know." David stood frozen, his fingers trembling as he touched the delicate paper, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. A flood of emotions surged through him: happiness, disbelief, and a deep ache. Evelyn was carrying his children, their children, but the fleeting joy was quickly replaced by fear. She had left him, and now perhaps she never wanted to come back. He had hurt her too deeply, and the realization that he might lose the family he never knew he wanted until this moment was suffocating. Without a moment's hesitation, David bolted out of his office. He wouldn't let Evelyn slip away from him forever. David found Evelyn in a small seaside town where she was living in a modest yet cozy little house. She had chosen a life of solitude, far away from the glitz and painful memories of the past. When David arrived, his eyes were immediately drawn to the sight of Evelyn with her heavily pregnant belly, an image that rendered him speechless. Evelyn saw him from a distance. Pain flickered in her eyes, but she quickly turned away as if trying to escape. Yet David wouldn't let her run anymore. "Evelyn!" he called out, his voice filled with desperation. She froze, her hand instinctively resting on her belly, as if shielding the two tiny lives within from the man standing before her. "Why are you here?" Her voice was cold, stripped of the warmth it once held. David took slow steps towards her, his gaze filled with anguish. "I know you're pregnant." He hesitated, his voice breaking. "They're mine, aren't they?" Evelyn clenched her fists tightly, her eyes unwavering. "Number, they are not yours," she said firmly, without hesitation. Her words struck David like a dagger to the heart. He shook his head in disbelief. "Evelyn, you can't deny the truth. I know the truth." She let out a bitter laugh, pain evident in her eyes. "Truth? Do you want to know the truth, David? The truth is that you used me for revenge. The truth is that you destroyed my family. The truth is that we were never anything more than a deal." David fell silent, unable to refute her words. "I don't need you, and neither do the babies." Evelyn cut off any defense he might have had. "Just leave me alone." David felt the crushing weight of losing everything. Dropping to his knees before Evelyn, his eyes pleaded with her. "Evelyn, I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you, but I won't let you face this alone. I want to be their father. I want to make things right." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. She couldn't bring herself to believe his words, not after everything they had been through. "It's too late, David." Her voice was barely a whisper, laden with sorrow. "You can't just come back and pretend nothing happened." David closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "I'm not pretending. I love you, Evelyn. I love you and our children." Evelyn stared at him, conflict raging in her heart. Part of her wanted to believe him, to give him another chance, but the wounds he inflicted were still raw, haunting her every day. "If you can't forgive me, I'll accept that, but please don't deny me the chance to be their father." His voice cracked, his eyes begging for just one chance. Evelyn turned away, hiding the silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "They are not your key," she whispered, and David realized he had single-handedly shattered his own happiness. But David refused to give up. No matter how hard she tried to push him away, he was determined to prove that he truly wanted to be a father, to be the husband he should have been all along. This time, he wouldn't leave her alone. David realized that he had to fight to regain Evelyn's trust. He could no longer be just a husband in name only. He had to be her true companion, the father of the two children growing inside her. Evelyn was still deeply wounded, but deep down, she knew she couldn't hide the truth forever. After their painful encounter in the small seaside town, David understood that words alone wouldn't be enough to change Evelyn's heart. She had been hurt too deeply by his deception and calculated plans, but he couldn't give up. Despite Evelyn's rejection, David quietly cared for her in his own way. He didn't appear before her, but he watched over her from a distance. He hired people to help repair her house and discreetly paid off the hospital bills she wasn't aware of. When he learned that she was working at a small office to make ends meet, David contacted the director to ensure she had the best possible working environment where no one could make things difficult for her. However, Evelyn had no idea that every morning when she left her house, David was always there, watching her from a black car parked discreetly down the street. His gaze followed her every step, filled with silent longing. He knew she was still angry, still not ready to forgive him, but just seeing her safe every day was enough for him. One evening, as Evelyn returned home looking exhausted, her steps faltering from the subtle pains of pregnancy, David instinctively wanted to rush to her side and support her. But he held back, standing in the shadows, his fists clenched tightly. He silently vowed to himself that he would make things right, no matter what it took. No matter how many times Evelyn rejected his help, David remained patient, always nearby, like an invisible guardian. One stormy evening, Evelyn felt that something was wrong. Intense, sharp pains twisted in her abdomen, filling her with panic. Her trembling hands clung tightly to the edge of the table, sweat beading on her forehead. She collapsed onto the floor, overwhelmed by pain and despair. She bit her lip, struggling to reach for her phone to call an ambulance, but her hands were too weak. In her semi-conscious state, Evelyn murmured her mother's name in a whisper. Fear enveloped her, thinking that she might not make it through, that her children might never get the chance to be born. David, as if sensing something was wrong, rushed to her house the moment his assistant informed him that she hadn't answered her phone all afternoon. When he broke down the door and stepped inside, the sight before him made his blood run cold. Evelyn lay motionless on the floor, clutching her belly, her eyes closed, and her lips pale. "Evelyn!" he cried, rushing to her side and gathering her into his arms, his voice trembling like never before. For the first time in his life, David felt utter fear. His usual coldness and pride crumbled when he saw the woman he loved fighting for her life in his arms. He immediately took her to the hospital, gripping her hand tightly throughout the entire ride, whispering words of comfort, even though he knew she couldn't hear him. At the hospital, Evelyn was rushed into emergency care. David sat outside, his hands gripping the armrests of the chair, his heart burning with anxiety. He had never felt so helpless before. The weight of his past mistakes pressed heavily on him, tormenting him with every passing second. Hours later, the doctor stepped out with a serious expression. "Her condition is quite critical. We will do our best, but she needs absolute rest. Any further stress could be extremely dangerous for both mother and child." David didn't leave her side for a moment. He sat by Evelyn's hospital bed, holding her fragile hand, his eyes red with worry. When Evelyn finally opened her eyes, confusion and exhaustion clouded her gaze. Seeing David, she instinctively tried to pull her hand away, but the pain restrained her movements. "What are you doing here?" she asked weakly, her voice still filled with resentment. David held her hand tighter, his eyes filled with pain, regret, and profound love. "Evelyn, please, don't push me away anymore." She looked at him, her eyes conflicted, but the pain in her belly prevented her from arguing further. In that moment of vulnerability, when she thought she might not survive, Evelyn let down her guard. She looked directly into David's eyes, tears streaming down her face. "They're your children," she whispered, every word like a dagger piercing her heart. "If I don't make it, please take care of our babies." David was frozen in place. Her words struck him like a knife to the heart. "Evelyn!" he choked out, gripping her hand even tighter. "Don't say that. You're going to be okay." Evelyn shook her head weakly, offering a faint but painful smile. "I've tried so hard to protect them, but I'm scared that I won't be here for them." David buried his face into her hand, his voice trembling with emotion. "I swear, Evelyn, I'll do everything to protect you and our children. Just give me a chance." Evelyn closed her eyes and a tear slipped down her cheek. Outside the hospital window, the rain had finally stopped. The streetlights cast a soft glow over David's face, full of remorse and determination. He knew that if he had another chance, he would never let Evelyn face anything alone again. Dear reader, are you still following this story? Did this story touch your heart? Leave a comment below. At that life and death moment, David realized that his love for Evelyn had surpassed hatred and pride. He was determined to start over, not as a vengeful man, but as someone who truly loved her. But would Evelyn give him a chance? Could her wounds ever heal? And most importantly, could she trust him again? The surgery began under an atmosphere of intense tension that engulfed the entire hospital. Evelyn was wheeled into the operating room in critical condition, her heartbeat weakening and vital signs deteriorating. Outside, David stood frozen, his hands clenched so tightly that they turned white, his eyes never leaving the closed door. Every passing minute felt like an eternity. David had never experienced fear so vividly before. A man who once feared nothing in the business world now found it difficult to breathe, terrified of losing the only things that truly mattered to him. He prayed, something he had never done before, pleading with whatever force above to keep Evelyn and their babies safe. When the light above the operating room finally turned off and the door swung open, the doctor stepped out with a calm yet exhausted expression. David rushed forward, his voice hoarse with anxiety. "How is she? Evelyn, and my children?" The doctor removed his mask and offered a reassuring smile. "The surgery was successful. Mother and babies are safe. Evelyn will need time to recover, but your 2 baby girls are healthy." David felt his entire body collapse in relief. He exhaled deeply, his eyes red-rimmed, leaning against the wall as if the entire world had just been returned to him. He stood silently at the window of the recovery room, gazing inside at Evelyn, lying pale yet peaceful on the hospital bed. Beside her, 2 tiny cribs held their sleeping angels. David stood there for a long time, his eyes locked onto the image of the 3 of them. The worry that had consumed him was gradually replaced by an overwhelming surge of joy, an emotion he had never experienced before. When he was finally allowed into the room, David walked toward the hospital bed, his legs trembling with emotion. Evelyn was still weak, but when she saw him enter, she offered a faint smile, her eyes gentle yet cautious. David said nothing. He bent down and pressed a trembling kiss to her forehead. "Thank you. Thank you for not leaving me alone," he choked, his voice thick with emotion. Evelyn gave him a weak smile and whispered, "I told you, they are your children." David froze, staring at her before turning his gaze to the 2 tiny figures sleeping peacefully. With shaky hands, he gently lifted one of the babies from the crib. The baby was so small, her soft skin radiating warmth, and her delicate scent filled his heart with an indescribable emotion. Tears rolled down David's face as he gazed at the precious life in his arms. The baby's tiny fingers curled around his, forming an unbreakable bond. "Hello, my little girl," he whispered, his voice hoarse with love. As he held the baby, his eyes never left her tiny face. Evelyn watched him, an indescribable emotion welling up inside her. She had once resented him, once thought of leaving him forever. But in this moment, seeing David weep with happiness, her heart softened. David turned to Evelyn, his eyes glistening with sincerity. "I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused you. I don't deserve you, but I will do everything to make it right for you and our children." Evelyn shook her head, tears streaming down her exhausted face. "Let's leave the past behind, David. For the children, for our future." David squeezed her hand tightly, his heart overflowing with joy. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to have a real family. The small hospital room was filled with warmth and light, a new beginning without hatred or pain, only genuine love and hope for tomorrow. David leaned down, pressing a tender kiss to Evelyn's forehead before looking over at their 2 little angels. "I promise, Evelyn, I will never let you suffer again." Evelyn smiled softly, her fingers intertwining with his, feeling the warmth and sincerity she now truly believed in. Outside the hospital window, the first rays of dawn began to break through, shining down on a new beginning filled with love and hope. Late in the afternoon, the golden hues of the sunset bathed the small house where Evelyn and their 2 children lived. She was gently rocking the twins to sleep, her eyes filled with a tender love that only a mother could possess. David stood quietly at the doorway, watching the scene before him, his heart overwhelmed by an indescribable emotion. In the past, he had thought of ruining her life, but now all he wanted was to protect her and their children for the rest of his days. After months of pain and redemption, David knew he was no longer the man he once was. That night, after the babies had drifted into peaceful slumber, David approached Evelyn, his deep blue eyes reflecting nothing but sincerity. He hesitated for a moment before pulling a small box from his pocket. Evelyn froze, looking at him in shock. "Evelyn," he began, his voice deep and steady, but with a noticeable tremor. "I once proposed to you out of hatred, out of selfishness, to take revenge on your mother. But today I stand before you with a completely different heart. I love you, Evelyn. Please give me a chance to love you fully, to build a real family together." Evelyn gazed into his eyes, no longer seeing the cold calculation that once defined him. Instead, there was warmth, a sincere vulnerability that touched her deeply. Tears welled up in her eyes before she could stop them. "David, she whispered, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. The painful memories of the past still lingered, but so did the moments when he cared for her without hesitation, the sleepless nights he spent by their babies, the way he looked at their daughters with a love so profound it melted her heart. David slowly knelt down, holding her hand tightly, his gaze filled with nothing but devotion. "I don't need you to answer right now, but I want you to know I'll be here, waiting for you, until you believe that my love for you is real." Evelyn looked at the man before her, the man who was once filled with vengeance and bitterness, now humbly asking for a chance with all the sincerity in his heart. She found herself at a loss for words. After that heartfelt proposal, David remained patient, never pressuring Evelyn to give him an immediate answer. He understood that she needed time to trust him again. Day by day, David showed his love through the smallest gestures. He picked Evelyn up from work, took care of their daughters, and shared peaceful moments with her. He was no longer the cold-hearted CEO, but a devoted father and a man who cherished his family above all else. Slowly, Evelyn began to feel the genuine change in him. It wasn't out of obligation, nor out of guilt. It was a pure, selfless love that David had for her and their children. One evening, as David gently rocked their daughters to sleep, his eyes filled with a soft tenderness that Evelyn had never seen before. Standing by the door, she watched him in silence, feeling an unfamiliar yet comforting sense of peace wash over her. She stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, her voice soft but firm. "I agree. Let's start over. For you, for me, and for our children." David froze, unable to believe what he had just heard. He turned to look at her, his eyes brimming with emotion, as if afraid this was just a fleeting dream. "Evelyn, are you sure?" Evelyn nodded, her lips curling into a gentle smile. "I've seen the sincerity in you, David. I believe we can rebuild, as long as you truly cherish this family." David could no longer hold back. He pulled her into a tight embrace, tears of joy streaming down his face. For the first time in his life, he understood the true meaning of happiness. Life after that became more radiant than ever. David was no longer the man consumed by work and revenge. He had transformed into a devoted father and a loving husband who cherished his family above all else. Every morning he woke up early to prepare breakfast for Evelyn and their two daughters. The cheerful laughter that filled their small home each day brought David a warmth he had never known in his past. Evelyn, too, finally felt the true happiness she had long yearned for. She no longer had to struggle alone, because now she had David by her side. Together, they built a happy home, a place where pain no longer existed, only love and trust. One warm afternoon, Evelyn sat by the window, holding their daughters in her arms, watching David bustling around in the kitchen, preparing dinner. A soft smile graced her lips, and her heart filled with gratitude. She turned to him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "Thank you, David, for loving me and our children wholeheartedly." David stepped closer, gently kissing her forehead and their daughters, his deep voice filled with certainty. "Thank you, Evelyn, for giving me a chance to love you again." And so they finally had a complete family, a home built on love, forgiveness, and understanding. Love can overcome any hatred when people have enough compassion and sincerity. Evelyn and David proved that, no matter how painful the past may be, true love has the power to heal everything if one dares to open their heart. Thank you for following our story. Did this story touch your heart? Leave a comment below. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.